Well, I received the script at a kind of special time for me. It was if I remember the timing correctly, it was shortly after I had just been to Sundance with another film, and it was my first time that I kind of had a more formal. Sorry, my cat is trying to photobomb me. I was like, oh, people are making, because when I went through that moment for myself, I was like, okay, well, I'm really curious what roles are going to be available to me, and there, not everyone is making films with, trans and non-binary roles, but obviously this film is putting that kind of role center stage. I feel really excited. It's always, especially when you work on an indie, you're like, where's it going to go? Like, who's going to see it? What's going to happen? And so it's just really fun. It feels like, I don't know, time in COVID and also time in working on films is always very like abstract to me. I'm like, I feel like we just wrapped yesterday, but also I feel like it was 1,000 years ago. So it always like catches me by surprise whenever a premiere is happening. I'm like, oh my God.
I mean, like we all had such strong trust in each other as artists. Like we would talk about the character and talk about the story a lot and like spend time with each other, just enjoying each other's company. But like also, it was really fun being able to see what everybody did. We enjoyed each other as performers and as people. It's not very often that like non-binary actors get to hang out together in my experience so far anyway. So that was a real joy. And we definitely all felt the responsibility of bringing this character to life in a real and three-dimensional way and telling this story in the most grounded way possible. And we all work together very hard on that. Coming to terms with your gender identity, which can be a really alienating thing to grapple with by yourself when you don't have a framework for it. And then to be afraid that the person you love will not understand that or treat you the same. That internal confusion and fear and that sort of lonely feeling. I was like, oh yeah, I recognize that. Absolutely recognize that.
With this sort of beautiful love story going on, and then it flips it, right? And it creates something that I think is a love story for today, and that is relevant for today. So what I love about that is that can attract the curiosity and pique the curiosity of an audience member who might not necessarily be someone who's going to be support, of queer culture, but could open their thinking because they can probably see themselves in Denny or in Ryan. And Denny and Ryan both go through tremendous growth in this film to rectify that disconnect between what is socially accepted and what really is true in them. And I think the movie can bring people in a very powerful way to where I think that could potentially shift some views. You just never know how a device like that has sort of surrealist elements and stuff is gonna play. You're hopeful, right? You're taking a risk, and I'm delighted. I watched the movie and I find it so compelling. Like that first time, especially, it's curious with the stuff in the mirror at the start with all of them, but that first time you see the switch. When you've had Liv, it's in like the optometrist, and then Liv goes down and puts the contact lens in and comes back up, and it's Chloe. And I find it incredibly moving. So yeah, I think it was an amazing story device used, and I think we were very lucky just to get 4 great actors.
I think it's immensely important. I have my own kind of struggles with gender that I think looking back started very young, but I just never, when you don't see something and you don't have the words for it and you don't have the expression for it, it's so difficult to come to terms with it yourself and to understand it. And I think the more that we show these super, forward thinking and open-minded films to audiences that don't necessarily see it every day or, in around them in their cities, I think it's crucial. I think it's really, really, really crucial.
Under My Skin is really about kind of a love affair starting right as Denny, this character, is kind of recognizing that they are struggling with their gender and kind of having all these discoveries alongside the building of this relationship. And ultimately that journey really affects the relationship. So Denny is like a really artistic and creative and kind of free flowing person, who's really, I said this in one of the other things Chloe and I had talked about. It's like it's almost like a coming of age story, even though it's not, because they are really finding themselves. And so it's fun to play that kind of character who's really like in a moment of exploration and questioning. I think it's a really beautiful message because I think that without challenging that, it's like we kind of just go along with whatever we're dealt, and I think on kind of an unconscious level that can be really painful for people. But once you have kind of this awakening to other possibilities, it's like, oh, well, maybe that makes sense for me, or maybe this makes sense for me. I mean, I think it happens particularly for queer people and for non-binary and gender non-conforming people, because it's so rare that we do see ourselves represented. And so when I think about even a lot of gay people I know, they didn't know they were gay until they met other gay people, because it was like, oh my God, that's a thing. And then like, when I think about my own like journey with gender, it was like the first time I saw a trans person on TV, I cried and like had no idea why I was crying. And so I hope that this film is kind of a piece of that journey for people.